Facebook and LinkedIn, which this is pretty exciting. We're going to talk about today something that is going to impact every single owner, and it's coming. And that is that you're going to have to tell the government that you own these businesses, no matter who you are, pretty much. And it's going to change a whole lot of reporting obligations, even for small and medium sized businesses in a big way, where you're going to have to report your ownership. And so, what I wanted to do is jump on this live to talk about the Corporate Transparency Act, which comes into effect on January 1st, 2024, to make sure that you have the details. And we're going to be talking a lot about this over the next 3 months to get you prepared for the reporting requirements that is going to impact every single owner here, with making sure you're telling this new regulatory power, FinCEN, what you own here in the United States. But let's back up for a second and talk about why are we now having to do this reporting? Well, it's because of the drug traffickers. Thank you very much. All of you money launderers and those that are engaged in illegal activities, using businesses to siphon money across the entire world. Well, you're going to get caught now, and now you've ruined it for all of us, where we have to do these additional disclosures. Europe and the UK have implemented these transparency acts where they're now trying to understand the owners of entities to try to trace money laundering and other illegal activities. And now the US is doing the same. So it is what it is, that we have to. So the Corporate Transparency Act, which I just mentioned here just a little bit ago, is really its purpose is to catch bad actors. If you've watched any episodes of Suits, you talk about how people have siphoned money to foreign countries like Luxembourg and Switzerland. Well, the ownership of companies and trying to trace these illegal transactions, you need to understand who the owners are in order to do it. And so now FinCEN, the federal government, is going to have those tools. So the FinCEN is going to utilize the information that we're going to talk about that everybody has to report next year in order to maintain a national registry. Now, they say they're only going to allow authorized users, such as law enforcement agencies and other financial institutions, the ability to look at this information. But who's kidding? Once we start disclosing this into centralized databases, everybody is going to somehow be able to figure out who the owners are of all entities. And you may be saying, well, wait a minute, don't all owners get disclosed? Well, in the state of Texas, we only have to tell the state of Texas, the Secretary of State, who our governing authority is. And so if you're a limited partnership, that's a general partner. If you're an LLC, that's your manager. Now, if you are a member managed organization, which are owners that are also operators, if you choose that, you had to tell the state who the owners are by that choice. But as I talk about all the time, I don't choose member managed organizations, not just for that, but for a variety of other reasons. So we do manager organizations. The board of directors, they have to be disclosed to the Secretary of State. But in Texas, we haven't had to disclose the owners in many aspects, for those purposes. Now, the IRS, they get to know who the owners are, which is why I always said isn't this a little bit more to the centralized database? Because, we have to designate who we provide dividends to, distributions to through K-1s, if it's a partnership, or an LLC tax as a partnership. So I was always like, hey, this information is already out there to some extent. But the reality is that entities can own entities, which can own entities, which can own entities. And I think FinCEN is out there to try to be able to provide a centralized database to then use tools to just cut through all of it to find out who the owners are. So it is what it is. It was enacted on January 1st of 2021. It's coming effective on January 1st, 2024. And there's really not much we can do about it. Well, so let's get to who needs to tell FinCEN about their ownership. And the reporting companies, which is defined in the statute, are who have to file the reports with FinCEN. And the reporting company is any corporation, LLC, or other similar entity created by a filing document with the Secretary of State. So we know for sure corporations, LLCs, limited partnerships, I bet you're going to get captured at some way because of the way we structure those LPs. But, it's a big, broad categories that's going to basically capture all the small, medium-sized businesses. Now, there are some exemptions from being able to report. In fact, there's 23 categories of exemptions from reporting. Public companies, reason why is they already have to provide this information, so the government doesn't need it again. Registered broker dealers, same thing. That's a requirement for federal regs that already get people. Certain investment companies, banks, money transmitting businesses, commodity, pooled investments, 501c tax entities, they don't have to report. And then there's some other ones that are out there. And so basically, it's those that already have extensive reporting requirements. And 501c3 exempt businesses. Now, be careful because some people are other 501 entities, or excuse me, not 501. Some people are just nonprofit entities, not 501c tax exempt entities. And so if you're just a Texas nonprofit but don't have IRS exemption, you would have to report as well, potentially. There is another big bucket exemption that's out there, and it will impact, I think, some more medium-sized businesses. Small businesses, I hate to tell you, but this is something we're going to have to, work through and get you up to date on, so that way you can be compliant with FinCEN regs and the TCA. But for an entity can also be exempted is if it is owned or controlled by an exempted entity. So that's that laundry list there. But really, the more important one is if you have, now stick with me here, there's 3 requirements to be exempted: 20 full-time employees in the United States. You have $5 million more, $5 million or more in gross receipts or sales. Now, that's not net profit, that's gross revenue, essentially, on your previous year tax return, and you operate with a physical office within the US. That's going to capture some exemptions in the medium-sized business to take off the medium-sized business burdens of this. But let's be honest, I mean, most of small business is not necessarily going to have 20 full-time employees and not $5 million. So, a lot of clients are going to have to comply with this, I don't know that it's going to provide a whole lot of value for the government, but we're stuck in it here. Now, if you do get captured in this reporting companies, what do you have to tell the federal government? Well, you're going to have to provide your company's legal name, address, jurisdiction, your EIN, which again, tells me, hey, the IRS already knows all this stuff because we file stuff and have an EIN. But you're also going to have to provide all beneficial owners and company applicants. We're going to come back to those 2 parts here in a second. Full legal name, date of birth, residential address, and some sort of photo ID number or image. Now, uploading that into FinCEN, we're still waiting for that stuff to come in on how we're going to be uploading all that or delivering that to the government for it. And you're going to end up getting a FinCEN identifier. So that way, if you do it once, evidently you can use that identifier to say, hey, I own these 7 companies, or I'm a company applicant, like for lawyers, because we're about to get captured in this, for these, 30 some odd companies that maybe we're going to be making some filings for them on. Now, a beneficial owner, and now we're going to come down to those 2, is anyone that has either substantial control over the reporting company, okay, because we already talked about how we create a reporting company, or owns or controls at least 25% of the ownership interest of the reporting company. Okay. So now we've got the 2 buckets. So the first one is, are you a company that is going to have to report? The reality is most of us are. Then what you have to report is the company name and then the beneficial owners. Now, when we dig down into the beneficial owners thing here, we realize that beneficial owners is a control test or an ownership test. So get ready for it, because substantial control is depending upon the power an individual person actually exercises over there. FinCEN has said that an individual will have substantial control of a reporting company if they direct, determine, or exercise substantial influence over the reporting company's important decisions. If you're a little bit as confused as I am on that, welcome to the club. I think we're going to get more guidance as we get closer, and actually information and questions as people have to comply come in. But if you're looking at it, a manager of an LLC, even if they're not an owner, you're going to have to disclose them. Arguably CEOs, CFOs, COOs, fall directly into that category. So this is going to get board members as well as officers of companies that have to be disclosed, along with 25% or more owners that are out there. Now, again, what are you going to have to tell them if you are one of those? It's you're going to have to give them your name, your address, some sort of ID or photo upload on there, and you're going to get a FinCEN identifier. So what the government is essentially trying to create is a master database of all beneficial owners, 25% or more, and all controlling officers, board of directors, all in one database that they can connect across the entire United States. And so they're really unifying all of this information. Now, when do you need to tell the federal government this? Hold on, you don't have to do it today. This is where we're preparing to educate and advise and support small and medium-sized businesses, which is what we do on a daily basis. We don't actually have to report until January 1 of 2024. And then if we form any entities, like we form entities all the time here, weekly, we've got companies getting formed. We're good. We don't have to do it until next year, before the end of next year, for all companies prior to January 1st, 2024. But then if you are formed after January 1st, 2024, you've got 30 days to comply. And so here at the South Texas Business Lawyers, we're already creating processes for all the companies we help, where while we guide you to do your EINs here, so that way you can get your EIN, we're going to have guides here to make sure we can get you registered with FinCEN to meet those compliance requirements. But just like everybody, we're waiting to see what happens. I just noticed there's a duck at the top of my head here. I'm live, so I'll just tell you that's from my daughter. She always tries to make sure it's in the shot. It's just kind of quite entertaining that it is predominantly in the shot today here. Honey, I love you if you're watching this from my baby girl. All right. What if you don't tell? Because, some people are like, you know what, this is just too much. The government already gets all this information. I'm not going to do it. Well, here's the interesting thing as well is there's really not any criminal or civil penalties if you negligently violate it, which I'm going to say negligently is ignorance. You didn't know. But if you fail to report or you put false information in there, you could be subjected up to $10,000 in fines and up to 2 years in prison on a criminal side if you are purposefully not filing. So unfortunately, because you watch this, be careful, because I don't know that you can claim ignorance if I just told you about that. The hope is that this process becomes something that is maybe a little bit to set up at the beginning, but then becomes just a click every single time once you get a FinCEN number to just insert yourself into the company. Now, what we're going to have to do too is if there's any sort of change in the company, and can work with me on this one. Let's say you fire a CEO and hire a new CEO, you got 30 days to update it. You bring on another person onto the board, 30 days to update it. We as filers, whoever files it, which lawyers, we're going to do a lot of this starting in January, we also have to attach ourselves to the company. And again, I just believe that the federal government's trying to create this web to make sure they can see the connectivity between all entities across the entire country, so that way they can trace money. Will they use it for other aspects like, failure to pay, judgments, child support issues, yada, yada? Probably. Don't be surprised if that takes place. The transparency, once it's there, is going to be there for everybody, even though they say it's for law enforcement purposes today. That doesn't mean it's not going to change. But again, it's the world that we live in. So what do you need to do to get ready? Well, right now, stay tuned. Make sure that you subscribe to all of our social media outlets. If you're not a part of our private Facebook group, where we're streaming right now with this as well as doing other educations, we'll be doing even more educations within our private Facebook group. Join now, so that way you don't miss out. We're going to be doing workshops at the first of the year, so that way you can help yourself without having to go through and hire somebody to do it. This is something that is supposed to be somewhat of a check the box process to form your entity, and we're going to be right there with you, helping you check the box as part of what we do to educate and support small and medium-sized businesses across Texas. with that, if you have any questions, comment here. My team's going to be watching this now if you've got any questions, or if you are watching this after the fact, put a comment in. We watch it all. We'll get connected with you there, and stay tuned. We're going to do a lot more education. We're keeping our eye on this to make sure you are informed and can meet this 2024 day of reckoning for us all as the Corporate Transparency Act comes into place. It's been great having you guys watch. We've had lots of people watching here, which is kind of cool. And I look forward to doing this again. This wasn't that bad. So we'll do more of these. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.